Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to another edition of the Minara Business Sense. Minara Business Matters is brought to you by the Minara Chamber of Commerce. Our regular presenter, Anwar Mullah, is currently traveling, and I have the privilege of being your host this evening. My name is Ibrahim Patel. The Minara Chamber of Commerce is a formal business entity that supports and champions the cause of businesses in South Africa. The focus of the Chamber is on entrepreneurship and business development. Each year, the Minara Business Chamber conducts the Minara Business Recognition Awards, and this year it is set to take place on the 25th of October in Durban at the Orient Hall. The keynote speaker is Riaz Hafiji, who is the Senior Vice President of Toyota South Africa. Excitingly, this year's event will honor Minister Naledi Pandor, who is the Minister of International Relations for South Africa, with the Lifetime Achiever Award for her role in bringing the quest of justice and humanity onto the world court. The Minara Business Awards takes place against the backdrop of the awards themselves, which are open for nomination, and the call for nominations for the Business Awards was announced earlier this year, and further details can be found on the Minara website, which is www.minara.org.za. The Business Awards recognizes the excellence of the Muslim business community and Muslim business persons. Anyone is allowed to nominate either themselves or their friends or someone that you deem worthy of nomination. There are various categories for these awards, which I will bring about in detail a little later. But this evening, we are privileged to be joined by our special guest, Ameen Hassen, who is the head of Shariah banking at Standard Bank. And Standard Bank is a partner of Minara in the Minara Business Recognition Awards. Ameen, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Ibrahim Bhai, to you and to the listeners. Jazakallah for having me.
Shukran. I'm certain that Johannesburg, what I'm told, is experiencing a very warm autumn rather than a normal autumn. It's almost like summer in Johannesburg.
It is. It's been very, very hot the past few days. I woke up yesterday morning wearing a hoodie and a tracksuit, and I went outside and then I started feeling hot and I realized, hey, there's something wrong here.
But of course, Johannesburg is the seat of economic power, and that's where business happens. And it's it's the crux of our economy, right? I mean,
Absolutely. There's a famous, I'm going to use this famous advert, Ibrahim Bhai, because it is our advert as part of the group. There's the famous saying that Sandton is the richest square mile in Africa. Um, and we post that advert out as part of our Liberty group. But if that contextualizes it in terms of it being the seat of economic activity, I mean, the richest square mile in Africa is no small claim to make. And we tussle between ourselves and Nigeria from an Africa perspective as to which country has the largest GDP. But certainly, majority of South Africa's GDP is stationed within South Africa. Is stationed within Johannesburg, and much of that actually is as a result of it being the financial sector center of South Africa. I was reading some data the other day where 26% of South Africa's GDP is actually as a result of the financial sector.
Which is headquartered in Johannesburg.
Which is headquartered, correct. There's everything that we do from a financial perspective is in Joburg. So a quarter of South Africa's economy runs out of Joburg.
And it's interesting that you made the comparison with Nigeria because, the latest data shows that South Africa's economy has now grown to be the largest on the African continent, and Nigeria has dropped to number 4 position.
Yeah, look, I think there's certainly some macroeconomic items that we can have as a responsible for that. Commodity prices over the past few years now has been on a run. They've increased significantly, compounded by the depreciating rand against the dollar. That's actually given us good flows, international flows to South Africa. and actually aided quite a tepid growth range over the past few years. So if you look at COVID from 2019 up to 2024, many economies actually suffered and found it difficult to recover or at least maintain the lowest levels of growth. South Africa was lucky. Commodity prices globally and the depreciating rand, us being a very big commodity producer, especially within the mining sector, largest gold reserves, big platinum sector. So that definitely aided us through the cycle.
But I mean, that seems to suggest that there's a great deal of confidence in our economy, that it is not all the doom and gloom that we subject ourselves to every day.
Look, Ibrahim, there's two ways of looking at this, right? You've got people that look through the short cycle, and you've got people that look through the long cycle. Generally,
Hmm.
markets adapt themselves to the longer term cycle. And if you look at the longer term cycle, I think as South Africa, we pride ourselves on our Chapter 9 institutions. They definitely have shown independence. Our central bank, as the prudential authority and the custodian of monetary policy in South Africa, is lauded across the world for how they manage our monetary policy. And generally, when we speak business confidence, what you actually speak to is sustainability of economic policy in the country. And I think, given the insulation that our Chapter 9 institutions have by virtue of them being enshrined within the Constitution, what you have is very good, stable economic policy, and it will take a lot for economic policy to be changed in South Africa. So I think that really is what gives longevity to business confidence. And I think even though we're in a year of election and people are holding their wallets close to them, I do believe that we shouldn't see any material change to economic policy, which should bolster business confidence through all cycles, at least for the next 5 years.
It's interesting that you talk about the elections. I mean, in the context that we now have all these parties that are going around the entire country and promising the voters that if we elect them as the leaders, then there'll be so much of change that takes place. But contextualized against that is you've said that there's a very strong economic policy that is inherent in our country and that it has created sustainability. And I think that that's a very important aspect that you have picked on, that amongst all the noise that the political parties are making, there is a central economic policy that has sustained our economy.
Absolutely. I think if you just look at how our Reserve Bank managed rates and our monetary policy through probably the world's worst pandemic, we were actually fine. We managed inflation really well. And remember, inflation is something that actually erodes the real value in the consumer. And our country actually managed it well. If you look at the long-term trend line, we back to our inflation range. We back to the long-term interest rate range of the repo rate from the Reserve Bank. So all things considered, yes, I'm not suggesting that that we must get involved or get sucked into the politicking. We must be prudent in who we select in our voting. And definitely, there's a lot of politicking that's going on at the moment, and we must do our best to try and pierce that politicking veil and get to the actual content of the parties below it. But generally, because of the independence of certain of our institutions, it gives us that sound economic policy stability.
You remind me of the fact that the economic policy of our country has been the saving grace of the country. Because if I compare back to 2008, when we had the global financial crisis, South Africa emerged unscathed from it at a financial level. Yes, there were a few companies that might have downscaled their operations, but not because of a failing in the South African economy, but because of the pressures they were facing back at the head office. So, for instance, Ford Motor Company downsized its East London factory, not because of something wrong in the South African economy, but because of the challenges that it was facing in the US economy.
Absolutely, Ibrahim. And if you look at some of the key decisions that some of the financial institutions made during that time, that actually shows the confidence that we have in the monetary policy. So, for example, if you just take the mortgage sector, and I speak under correction, but this is just my my knowledge on what happened in certain sectors during that time. If you look at the mortgage sector or the housing sector during that bust, the real estate sector in America was going through hell, which caused the global financial crisis. And globally, what you saw happen was lenders, or at least mortgage lenders across the world, took a particular posture. And that
Mm,
posture was conservatism. And they decided that they would be ultra conservative in how they lend. But if you look at how South Africa approached it, South Africa took a different stance. South Africa actually said, no, we're actually quite fine here. We need to
mm,
grow our economy. And one of the ways in which we grow is by lending. And by virtue of secured lending and controlled lending within the housing environment, that the property sector actually grew during that cycle, especially lending, and it paid dividends, coupled with the sound financial policy of our JSE, which enables continuously capital flows in the equity markets and the debt capital markets. So I think all of the things, if I were to paint a picture of South Africa, we estimate that our GDP will double this year from last year, even though we're coming off a low base, so
mm.
0.6% to 1.2%.
You're talking about our GDP growth, right?
GDP growth,
Yeah.
yes. So last year we ended off at around 0.6%. We estimate that we should reach about 1.2% GDP growth this year. And I think all of these things say something. It says, guys, don't lose hope in South Africa. we
Exactly.
we've got some issues. We've got some if you just take and this is my observation, not necessarily the observation of Standard Bank. It's just Ameen's personal opinion. If you take away the corruption issues that we face broadly across South Africa, and if you take the power issues and some of the failed sort of utilities and state-owned enterprises, which is as a consequence of corruption, if you actually fix that, if you take that, isolate those two major structural issues that you have across our country, the rest of the country is actually doing quite fine.
You know, I was speaking to an international investor. They're a foreign mutual fund. And their outlook on South Africa was that our rand is undervalued rather than overvalued. And if I look at it and think about it carefully, that given the political turmoils that we've gone through, given the load shedding that we've gone through, the impact of on our business environment, the impact of global issues, inflation and rising interest rates across the world because of the Ukraine-Russia war, and South Africa's stance on the Palestinian issue, one would have thought that our rand would have dipped down to about 27, 28 by now, given that the vagaries within the global system. But yet you have international investors that are saying that our rand is undervalued, and they think that it should be at a stronger point.
Ibrahim, look, you've got something in financial markets that you call purchasing parity or
Mm,
interest rate parity. And essentially what that means is if you've got a return in, let's say, either America, you've got a return there in dollar terms versus a return that you're going to get in South African terms. And I
mm,
and we hold the same view as
mm.
well for certain parts, that we do believe that the rand should strengthen in the medium term against the dollar. We see that the parity between returns across the world versus value of South African rand and the return you get in rand terms. We hold the view that the rand should appreciate in the short and medium term, not
Well,
massively, but it should appreciate.
well, you know, I had a long chat with Minister Ramaphosa, the Minister of Electricity, and I joked with him and I said, "Thank you for making certain that during Ramadan there was no load shedding." And we must of course acknowledge the fact that in the last almost 40 days we've had very minimal load shedding. And in the last 25 days, there's been no load shedding at all. Some skeptics amongst us will say, well, it's the government trying to keep the lights on because it's an election time. It's part of the electioneering. But having sat with him and listened to his well thought out strategy on addressing the load shedding issue, I must say I came back quite impressed that he's got tangible steps, including things like turning some of the existing old coal-fired power stations into gas-fired power stations, which are making it a lot cheaper for him to generate electricity. And he's already added almost 800 megawatts of extra capacity into the grid in the last 1.5 months. So I think that there is a good turnaround strategy that is taking place.
Ibrahim, look, maybe my sincere patriotism is blurring my vision here, right? But my view is very similar to yours. I think what many of us as South Africans have done incorrectly is we've thrown the baby out with the bathwater and given up hope on South Africa. Yes, we had a rot. We had a group of people that were trying to do rotten things. But I think we're on a positive trajectory. I think we have people that are sincere in what they want to do, and I think it's a matter of time. We've got, if I put it through a different lens, right? Your born frees of 1994 that hold no subconscious bias, that hold no subconscious racial tensions, that came through into a completely new democratic South Africa, are turning
The
30 this year.
Tinsalos, as President Ramaphosa said, the Tinsalos of the world.
They turning 30 this year. They've had
Yes.
freedom of movement, they've had freedom of education, access to good infrastructure, access to global markets, access to global education. And what you would see, and this is again my view of the medium term, is because they're now turning 30, many of them would start entering that middle management, senior management, and for that select few that are exceptional in what they do, junior executive management. And what that means is you will have a cohort of management coming through over the next 5 to 10 years that will fundamentally change policy, will change the way in which we do things, will create certain structural reforms across the different sectors of the economy, in whichever sectors they are employed. And so within a medium term, between 7 to 10 years, we ride through what we're fixing at the moment. We've got some things that are broken. It's like a house, right? You certain times your house is hit with a storm. You have to repair a wall, repair a driveway, repair a roof. You don't burn your house down and move out of your house. You invest a little bit more because of everything you've put into it to repair the wall, repair the driveway, repair the roof. And that's my metaphor of South Africa. We've been through a storm, the roof is leaking, there's a cracked wall, the driveway is cracked. We've got a little bit of paint work that we need to do here and there. But apart from those few structural issues, let's not give up on the house, man. Let's just reinvest in it and build it again.
Well, I mean, you just described my typical day of trying to fix my house and then trying to contend with my wife saying, well, I think it's time for us to sell the house.
Yeah, well, Durban is a special child, right? You guys have had some real issues. I don't know if it's Nazar or what. We must play Ruqya on loudspeakers across Durban.
I mean, you're the head of Sharia banking and not the chief economist at Standard Bank, but you've given me a great insight and our listeners a great insight into the macroeconomic policies and given great confidence. I mean, I feel so much more confident about our country and the way forward. The mere fact that you mentioned that you have these young 30-year-olds that have grown up in a free South Africa, that have experienced all the good that there is, that are turning professional, and that degree of professionalism that we've always been talking about that we require to take our country to the next level is now starting to permeate into the economy. And I'm really confident that we know that the future is a lot brighter. There's light. We've been through a tunnel that has been extremely dark for a long time, and we are now starting to see light. It might not be the end of the tunnel, but we're really starting to see bright lights.
Absolutely. I fully support that view. And again, maybe my sincere patriotism is blurring my view on this matter, but this is my belief. And I know that it is the belief of many patriotic South Africans that are all very invested in this country and sincerely hoping that we get out of the struggles that we have now.
Well, I mean, our topic of discussion this evening is the Minara Business Awards in the partnership with Standard Bank. Firstly, I must thank Standard Bank for having been a strong supporter and a strong partner of the Minara Business Awards for the last number of years. Through both yourself, Sharia banking and conventional banking in KZN that have supported us because you see the vision of the awards and you see the value of it. Now, the question that I would like to ask is that how does this event, I'm talking about the Minara Business Awards, align with Standard Bank, particularly Sharia Bank, the values and objectives, including your broader commitment to the community, the engagement and support that you enjoy in the community?
Ibrahim, look, as you mentioned, since 2016, I stand to be corrected. I think it was around 2016. In some way or form, Standard Bank has been supporting the Minara Chamber of Commerce, and for many years through our Sharia business. This year from our KZN province, and inshallah, we will do our best to support our community organizations as best as we can. Our motivation to support the Minara Chamber is quite simple. We believe that Africa is our home and we drive her growth. And in order for us to drive Africa's growth, we need to support key organs of society that serve as stimuli for our economic growth. And Minara is one of those organizations that strives to achieve business development and growth through an Islamic ethos. And knowing full well that the Muslim businessmen and women across South Africa are truly positive economic contributors. Thomson Reuters have put out a statistic a few years ago that Muslim businesses contribute at least 10% to the GDP of South Africa. So this is truly meaningful. So any organization that is involved in growing Africa, growing the communities in which they operate, this is an alignment of values to our group, and we will always, as a group, seek to find synergistic partnerships wherever we operate.
Personally, I've been, having these discussions with you since the 2015 discussion. We actually started the discussion of getting Standard Bank's involvement with Minara in 2015 and culminated in 2016. And I must attest to the fact that not only has it been in terms of a financial support, because Standard Bank has been the key sponsor of the awards, but also the contribution of individuals like yourself and others in your senior management, your Imran Nurbai, the KZN regional head, Hamid Nur Mohammed, and a number of individuals within the organization who have supported us, not just through making certain that the funding takes place, but also through the insight and the wisdom that you've given us. And I must thank you for that. For our listeners who haven't had the opportunity of being at some of our events, Ameen has been both the program director, and I mean, you've been fantastic at being the program director. You've also been a key speaker at the events, and I must say that the comments that we got post the events was that you're almost like a mufti when you speak. The bayan that you give is a fantastic bayan. People are enthralled by the level and depth of not just your financial knowledge, but your Islamic knowledge as well.
Alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increase me in knowledge and accept from us our humble efforts, inshallah.
Ameen, ameen, ameen. But more than everything else, I'm impressed by your dress sense, because whenever you attend any one of our events, your dressing is probably the best that I've come across at the events.
I'll wear socks this year, Ibrahim. Last year you troubled me about no socks. I'll wear socks.
I mean, the business awards has got various categories to it. It's the business person, which is the actual person that's running the business, and it could be any business that they are running. The business entity, which is in various categories, and then we've got the professionals, and we've got the young entrepreneurs, and we've got the women in business. And I'm certain that amongst in all those years, the clear indication has been that within the Muslim community, we've got some fantastic businesses that exist, not just the old businesses that have been around for many, many years, but newer businesses that are emerging and in diverse fields of operation, and they're applying new and modern techniques of management.
Absolutely, Brian. And look, obviously, I see things through the lens of the financial sector because that's where I work. So your yardstick sometimes is limited because of that. But if I were to use a good example of why what you're saying holds true in any market, one of the ways in which you measure the maturity of a market is what the asset managers are actually doing. And if you look at historically within South Africa, you've had venture capital funds, private equity funds that operated solely within a conventional universe. And generally, private equity, seed capital, venture capital, these are different phases of funding wherever a business is. Your seed capital, private equity would take early stage or startup businesses. Your venture capital will look at growth businesses and provide you the growth capital that you need. Now, up to today, you've only had conventional VC PE funds operating in South Africa. And for the first time, alhamdulillah, we're actually starting to see Sharia compliant VCs emerging. And for me, that's emblematic of exactly what you're saying. That what that means is there is a cohort of Muslim businesses that have passed startup phase and are actually prime recipients of growth capital. And we know that it is only when you grow businesses in an economy does the economy grow. So for me, this is what is testament to the statement that you make, is you're actually seeing the economic activity around this taking place.
I mean, we talk about economic growth, and part of economic growth is marketing and advertising. And we have to take an advertising break at this time so that revenue for the radio station can grow. So when we come back from the ad break, we'll chat more about the involvement of Standard Bank in partnership with the Minara Chamber of Commerce in the Minara Business Recognition Awards. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back to Minara Business Matters, brought to you by the Minara Chamber of Commerce. My name is Ibrahim Patel, the host for this evening, and I'm busy chatting with Ameen Hassen, who is the head of Shariah banking at Standard Bank. We were chatting, Ameen, about partnership between Standard Bank and Minara in the Business Recognition Awards. And you mentioned a very interesting thing, which is about venture capital and seed capital coming together with an entrepreneur who has an idea and building a business formation. And that gives us a lead into what is partnerships. And we're living in a world where with globalization, borders are diminishing, people are getting closer, markets are getting bigger. There's this buzzword that everyone talks about, all the Instagram influencers talk about it, collaboration. And these in essence are Islamic ways of doing business, the partnership and the collaboration, so that, it reminds me of the ayah of the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Oh, you believe, let there be trade amongst you for mutual benefit." And that partnership is for mutual benefit.
Absolutely. And I think what we've realized as a bank, we've put out into our longer term strategy and our 2025 goals is that we want to ensure that we grow our partnerships. There's no way on earth that we as a bank or any organization operating within this type of environment will grow without partnerships. The rate at which markets get cannibalized as a result of technology is immense. And the only way we can ensure that all parties mutually benefit is through partnerships. So we at the bank are big supporters of partnerships. We have implemented quite a number of partnerships over the past few years that have proven to be extremely successful. And I think for the foreseeable future, it would definitely be something on strategy for us.
But at a broader level, I mean, we're talking to the community, and there are a number of people that are out there that must be contemplating in a tough economic environment where they might have lost their jobs or they are changing position, wanting to go into some kind of business venture. And a lot of times people don't have the necessary capital, but the mechanism of having a collaboration with someone, a partnership with someone else. This is something that we need to encourage, that we bring people together, the hand of capital together with the sweat of the entrepreneur to build a new a new emergence of smaller businesses that would grow into the future and would be sustainable.
Ibrahim, if you allow me, look, I'm not sure how we press for time, because I think you're touching on something extremely important. I think one of the things that we need to get better at as a community is understanding how financial markets work and what is the appropriate source of funding for your particular venture. Many times people come to us as a bank. So we get requests every single day for somebody coming through to us saying, listen, I've got a new business. Can you please lend me some money to get this business off the ground? And we always have to turn the client away because banks don't provide what is known as seed capital. And I think this is something that, if you go looking for an orange tree in a vineyard, you're not going to find oranges. You're going to find
Sure.
grapes. And
Yes.
that's the idea that we need to perhaps, and this is just an idea for the context of the show, that which is Business Matters, perhaps a dedicated show on how new businesses actually go about seeking the correct funding, what funding is used for what stage your business is in, and where do you actually go to find the correct funding. Because I do believe that the capital exists. We do have lots of capital available as a country, but again, it's that analogy. If you go looking in the wrong place, you're not going to find it.
So you're absolutely correct that we want to have a different discussion on funding. But I think the concept that I'm alluding to is the fact that we need to open our minds to partnerships, and partnerships are not necessarily around just funding. It's also around the fact that Islam encourages a partnership between like minds. Islam encourages a partnership, and people should consider or could consider partnership is a way of building a business, and that not necessarily just two people getting together in a what we would have called a conventional partnership in the past, a 50% share of the profits, but that actual some examples come to mind that you have a butcher that might collaborate with a person who is a baker and make donuts on a Saturday morning in his butchery, which the donuts attracts the customers to the butchery who end up buying meat from the butcher.
Absolutely. So there's two key concepts, Ibrahim, that I want to land in support of the idea that you're putting forward. The first is many business owners are fearful of diluting their ownership in partnerships. And we see it all the time. No, I don't want to get in bed with another partner. That means they're going to own 10%. Then I can't make decisions and they're going to tell me what to do. We hear this all the time. And I think where we're heading to as a environment, economic environment, we have to be willing to share that equity. We have to be able 10% of, there's a famous thing in venture capital, is 10% of a billion is better than 100% of nothing.
Of
Uh,
course.
so that's the first idea that I want to give in support of people opening up their hearts and minds to partnerships. Do it correctly, document your relationship, iron out all of the possible friction or conflict areas, document how you will mitigate that, and inshallah you will have a success. And then in terms of collaboration, the second thing that we as a community, and if I recall, I spoke briefly on this last year at the Minara event last year, is we are fearful of our diminished risk. We, in the example that you gave of a collab, sometimes we hold in our heart, if I open up my doors to another business, that business is going to grow at my expense. Instead of us seeing more footfall coming through the door, we fearful that another business will grow. And it's this mindset that we need to get out of, that actually collaboration means both businesses grow. So instead of you growing each of your business independently, you grow the pie and then each of you get your share of a bigger pie.
And I didn't want to introduce that in the South African context, we would also have the candlestick maker as part of that collaboration, right?
Absolutely. There's no way that we can do that without it.
So, Standard Bank Sharia is a well-known entity, but some of our listeners might not understand what it is that you do at Standard Bank Sharia. So maybe you can give us some insight into what does Standard Bank Sharia do? What are the products that you offer, and what are the range that consumers can expect?
Ibrahim Bhai, Jazakallah for that opportunity. Look, we on the most elementary of savings products on the one hand to the most sophisticated of derivative and capital market products on the other hand, If you're a personal banking client of ours, you can get your basic savings and investment accounts with us. If you are a business banking client, you can get your full range of products: transactional accounts, call accounts, term deposit, notice deposits. You can get vehicle and asset finance, commercial property finance. So we can cater for almost all of your business requirements. And alhamdulillah, on the corporate side, if you need more complex advisory for your business, we can provide you with the most sophisticated of Sharia compliant advisory. We were the Sharia technical lead, alhamdulillah, on the National Treasury inaugural sukuk. We were joint arrangers on that transaction with our partners RMB and FNB Islamic Finance on that transaction. And we're proud to be the first bank in South Africa to execute on a mergers and acquisitions transaction completely in a Sharia compliant way, where we provided a Sharia compliant term loan for an acquisition, and that's reached about 500 million rand in funding. So across the spectrum of financial services, we then have our Sharia compliant funds available at Stanlib, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of Standard Bank Group, as well as in Melville Douglas. Then in another legal subsidiary of the bank, we've got Diners. We've got a Sharia compliant Diners card in a partnership in one of the legal subsidiaries that we have with Merchant Capital, a partner subsidiary of Standard Bank. We can do unsecured working capital finance for retail businesses in a Sharia compliant way. And then, depending on how complex the business is, if they need expansion into Africa, we operate within 21 countries in Africa. We've just taken a satellite office in Egypt. We've got offices in Dubai, New York, London, Jersey, Isle of Man, as well as in Beijing. So, truly global financial services group. And as Sharia banking, we operate across the group. So whatever the Sharia requirements are for our clients, we'll do our best to service them, inshallah.
It's wonderful to hear how Sharia banking, not just within Standard Bank, but within the country, has grown. The fact that you mentioned that the South African National Government Treasury bonds that was issued was co-led by both the FNB and Standard Bank Sharia banking divisions. It's now become a centralized part of our economy, and the growth of Standard Bank Sharia across the continent shows that there's a great demand for Sharia banking and Sharia financial products across the continent and across the world as well. And I think that bodes well for the industry, and it bodes well for the community, because when you started off, you said that the Thomson Reuters study, which shows that the South African population, which Statistics South Africa says is only 2% of the total population, which makes it about 930,000 inhabitants or residents of the country, and not all of them are business. So we're probably looking at about 50,000 population contributing to 2% of the GDP, which is a huge ratio.
Absolutely, complete disproportionality to our population and our GDP contribution. And if you look at the South African National Treasury sukuk that we issued 20 billion rand into the market, but it was oversubscribed by 1.7 times. That means there was demand for this instrument of up to 36 billion rand, which is really something to think about, that there was surplus liquidity at that point in time just within the few big banks and a little bit of asset managers of 36 billion rand. That's apart from the cash sitting in our personal clients' bank accounts, money under the mattress, money that
we won't talk about the money under the mattress. Right?
Yeah, because that's possibly equal to the money that's in the bank account. But what it does is, with National Treasury now issuing the sukuk, what it does is it gives the industry a benchmark. You now have what you call the risk-free rate in the industry. And by virtue of us now having a Sharia compliant risk-free rate, it gives us the ability as financial market practitioners, the ability to better price financial instruments going forward.
I mean, it's been a very interesting conversation. I didn't know how quickly this 1 hour has flown past. But, it's a very valuable insight into the what Standard Bank Sharia does, what you do in your role as the head of Sharia banking, and also the partnership with Minara in terms of the business awards. But, at the back of my mind, there's a question that has come that comes to me, and that is in this. Is it now 8 odd years that we've been in partnership, and because of COVID, we haven't had the 3 years of the awards. How do you believe that the partnership between Minara and Standard Bank enhances the overall experience and the impact of the event for the attendees themselves?
Look, I think it goes without saying that organizations seek sponsorships from bigger organizations to cover the costs of these events. And so Minara has sought sponsorship from us in this regard. And in terms of enhancing the overall experience, with Standard Bank being the largest bank on the continent and possibly one of the largest financial institutions as a whole on the continent, including our insurance and asset management divisions, we believe that as an organization, we bring gravitas and credence to any event. And by virtue of us being present at this, for us, it's a mutually beneficial partnership. We get the ability to showcase to our clients the good things that we can do as a financial services organization in hope that we may be able to grow our client base and help their businesses grow. And obviously supporting the Minara Chamber, recognizing business excellence, and inshallah serve as an encouragement to more businesses to come through into the economy.
And that is the vision of the Business Awards, that by recognizing the excellence that we have in our community, it not only encourages those recipients to grow their businesses and to strengthen the role that they play, but it also serves as an inspiration for others that come after them to say, if someone else could have done it, I can do it as well. And that's the belief that we have at the Chamber, that we need to grow each other and we need to grow everyone so that we all become strong contributors, not just to the economy and to our bank balances, but to society as well. And in that way, we need to get to the sense that everyone gets uplifted and everyone benefits out of the growth that takes place in our country. At the start of the conversation, I said that there are a number of categories in the Business Awards that people might want to nominate their friends, themselves, their partners, or anyone else that they believe is a deserved awardee. The process is that the nominations come in, they go through to an independent panel of judges, and the judges then look at all the different information that is supplied to them, and from that comes out the shortlist, and out of the shortlist comes the winners, who is announced at the program on the 24th of October. Now, on the 25th of October. The categories are the business entity of the year, and this is in the large and small businesses. This is a Muslim-owned business entity anywhere in South Africa that has been in operation for a minimum of 10 years in the large category and a minimum of 5 years in the small category. And, it's the actual business itself. So it's the brand, it's the business. Then we have the business person, who is either the owner of that business or a particular business, or even someone who is managing a large corporate. In the past, we've had CEOs of multi-listed companies, multinational companies, who have been awarded the business person of the year. So this is an individual. Then you have the business woman of the year, which is a female who is running a successful business, who is running her own business or any other business, and that is in her own right. Then we have the professional award, who are the professionals, whether they're accountants, heads of Sharia bank, lawyers, doctors, those in the medical profession, who are doing excellent work We also have the young entrepreneur or the startup category. These are young people that have started off their businesses or startups. So we're catering for all different levels of the economic and business journey. And then finally, we have the Community Builder Award. And this is an individual who is working selflessly, devoting their time to uplifting society. So, it's someone who has volunteered their time, who has volunteered their services, whether it is a person who's volunteering 3 hours a day at old age home, or someone who's volunteered their services to an Islamic organization. So there are various categories, and all the information for these categories is available on the website at www.minara.org.za. So, I would encourage listeners to nominate, and it's open across the entire country. These need to be from the Muslim community, Muslim businesses, and Muslim leaders of those businesses that are across the entire country, and they have to be South African by citizenship. So, it's a huge endeavor, and it's a huge task that takes place. And we encourage people from all across the country to send through those nominations. In parting, what is your advice for our listeners in our community?
Ibrahim, I think on that note, we don't know the good work that so many people are doing in their communities, whether it's social welfare, whether it's growing businesses, operating within their communities. The country is so vast and so wide. It's only if other people tell us about these good things that we'll actually know. We hear about listed entities and the good things that listed entities are doing, and that's simply because by virtue of our regulations globally, listed entities need to publish to the community what they're doing. But there's hundreds of thousands of Muslim-owned businesses across this country, or hundreds of thousands of Muslims employed within corporate South Africa that are doing such great work. And we don't hear about it, they fly under the radar. And also,
And
it's because of
that
our
is
culture. We don't blow our horn, right? We try and maintain humility, which is part and parcel of the culture of Islam, alhamdulillah. But this is not you blowing your trumpet. This is
yes.
somebody nominating you on the good work. So we ask all of those people who know of someone that is doing good work to please come through and nominate them.
Fantastic. Their advice is absolutely fantastic. And it was wonderful chatting to you. Shukran for your time, and shukran for your support for the Minara Business Recognition Awards. And thank you to our listeners. Shukran for having us with you this evening. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh from another edition of the Minara Business Matters, brought to you by the Minara Chamber of Commerce on Radio Al Ansar. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.